Hi everyone, welcome to this event, this great Careers in Startups Engineering event from Startup Link. I'm Sarah Adams, I'm from Melbourne Connect, and we're putting on this great festival. I'm just here basically to kind of do a quick intro before I throw to the experts, but I'd like to begin by doing an acknowledgement of country. So I just want to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Eastern Kulin Nations on whose unceded land the university conducts its business. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders from the lands upon wherever you might be today, across the country or even the world. So I will throw it over to Renee, the co-founder of Startup Link, and let her take you on this ride, I guess.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Before we start, just for the students that don't know much about startups, why should you care about startups? The Melbourne startup ecosystem is currently valued at $7 billion, and over $2 billion of VC funding is annually being funneled into the Australian ecosystem. Most of that funding goes straight into paying salaries. That's a lot of money, but what does that mean for us? Startup job growth is reaching record levels, so over 10% between 2018 and 2020, and that provides lots of job opportunities for you. Today we have Bradley, who's head of engineering at Linktree. We have Kelvin, product manager at Eucalyptus, Jock, co-founder of Mobile, all here to talk to you about their exciting journeys in the startup ecosystem. Before we get started, just some housekeeping. Can you all turn on your cameras if it's possible? Slido links will be dropped into the Zoom chat by Arian or one of the other co-founders at Startup Link. And feel free to drop your questions there, or at the end when we do Q&A, raise your virtual hand on Zoom during the Q&A time, and you can ask questions to the panelists then. We'll also be having a virtual catch-up afterwards on GatherTown, where you can chat to others who are passionate about startups. Okay, I'm going to pass over to our panelists for them to tell us a little about themselves and how they got involved in the ecosystem. Bradley, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everyone. And yeah, thanks once again for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. My background is I actually didn't study computer science. I studied Sonic Arts, and I learned software development, building synthesizers and generative art pieces. Pursued art for quite a few years whilst freelancing as sort of a software developer, web developer, and decided to jump into full-time employment after about 10 years when I started to see sort of the salary differences and what I could actually be achieving as a full-time web developer. So I eventually found my way to a creative agency called Bolster, who had just started building Linktree at the time. And I became the sole sort of technical employee for Linktree as the initial developer. Departed to go on a songwriting career. So how the tables had turned was quite funny. 4 years later, it feels like 10, but I'm head of engineering now at Linktree, managing a bunch of managers and a team of about 60 engineers across various practices of data, full stack software, DevOps, SRE, all types of things. It's been a wonderful journey, lots of different hats. Today's a grey beanie, but doing lots of different things between product, business, engineering functions. It's been super rewarding, and hard work's definitely starting to pay off, starting to see Linktree sort of continue to grow day to day.
Amazing. Do you want to kick it off as well, Jock?
Sorry, my little light just fell down. Thanks for having me. Thanks for Startup Link for organising the event. So my background, I actually studied at Melbourne Uni. I did engineering there. So I did civil engineering at Melbourne Uni, and I actually grew up on my family farm, which is up in north central Victoria. And what I do at the moment, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mobile, which is a livestock farm management software, or the farm management platform of the future. And I guess the easiest way to see where I am at the moment is just tell you a bit about our founding story. So yeah, studied at Melbourne Uni, went off and worked in engineering for a little bit, and ended up going back to the family farm. And when we went to the family farm, my dad and I were trying to like organize all that farm and livestock records, and all these records are all in his head, all to paper all over the place. And we're trying to centralize all these records, and we tried all these software programs and seeing something we could do to, make things simpler and more efficient for the farm, and sort of help Dad make some better decisions for the farm too. So we tried all these things, and what we found, things were too clunky, they were overcomplicated. And what we thought we could do is basically build something better than what was out there. So that was a bit like, I was young and naive, and thought it'd be easy, building software, it's easy, right? So went out there and me and my friend, Jack Hurley, who's a software developer, teed up together and went out to this journey that we're on now of building livestock farm management software for farmers, making their lives easier and more successful. So now I'm the CEO of this company. We're a small team of 7, and we're growing pretty fast. And we've got 750 properties, like farms across Australia and New Zealand, using our software, and growing at a rate of 12% every day. And yeah, it's a really exciting journey. I can't wait to share it with you guys. So cheers, thanks for having me.
Awesome. And last but not least, Kelvin.
Hi, thanks guys. Excited to be here. I am actually based out in Sydney, which I think isn't the case for most of you guys, but I am pretty much only 3 years into the workforce. I graduated 2018 with a bachelor's of electrical engineering and computer science. And I worked for a year as an electrical engineer in this health company called ResMed. And it was one of those companies where you have like 5 rounds of interviews as a graduate, like thousands of people get interviewed, and I think they only gave out about 4 spots that year. So it was incredibly competitive, and I went in and I hated the job. Actually, this is recorded, so maybe I'll use more neutral wording. I definitely, as an outlet for the job, I did a lot of I kind of started building apps, and I started really enjoying learning about software development. And at that time, one of my friends asked me if I wanted to help them on a startup. We went through an accelerator program. We even went to the US and did TechCrunch there just to see it and network. And then we burned through our capital in 2 months, and our entire startup just vanished overnight. And what I realized was, man, I really wish I knew how this actually worked. I really wish I knew how to run a business. And so I joined a 9-person startup called Eucalyptus, which was valuated at, I think, $5 or $10 million at the time as the second engineer. And it's been about a bit under 2 years. And now we're a $250 million company, going a bit above 90 people, I think, which is actually like an incredible amount of growth in such a short period of time. In that time, I've also actually transitioned from a software engineer to a PM, which is a product manager. And that's actually a job that I wasn't aware of having existed when I graduated at the time. But I can talk more about what a product manager does a bit later, I think.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Just before we move on to just general careers in startups, I'm actually quite curious, Kelvin, what was the biggest thing that you learned from being in a startup that did fail?
I think definitely going in with the mindset that you're here just to learn. I think especially that early on in my career, I think what I really needed to learn was that I'm actually here to get as many great mentors as I possibly can and learn from many different sources as I can, and kind of just humble myself. And it's not just oh, I'm an engineer, let me just build an app. There's actually so many great thought leaders out there and so many really intelligent people trying to tackle the problem in many different ways. And I think Eucalyptus has really helped expose me to a lot more super bright and talented people with different skill sets, and seeing how everyone works together and build a company and a team has really opened my eyes in just how you run a company fundamentally from like 4 people to like 100, you know?
Awesome, that's great. Kind of going off that too, careers are seen as like unreliable and unstable by students, and obviously with startups kind of failing 90% of the time. What do you three reckon that the values and benefits of working in a startup is? I'll go first from Bradley, if that's okay.
Yeah, cool. I was going to wonder if we were just going to kind of jump in and see who got in first, but no, I'm happy with the order. I mean, just straight up, working in a startup probably isn't for everyone. If you prefer a high degree of certainty, then maybe joining a startup isn't for you. But like Kelvin said, like there's a lot of opportunities within that uncertain environment, lots of opportunities for growth that you might not even expect, e.g. becoming a PM after being an engineer. So maybe that ambiguity can be also translated to just a really exciting place of uncertainty. And I think, you know, that can maybe take shape in many different ways. There's an ability to make a difference and to be heard and help steer the ship, which you might not get if you're sort of joining some corporate or even more established sort of scale up or just successful startup that's sort of transitioned. It's also just a better sense of developing the culture, how it could fit you. Like essentially, I think it all gets boiled down to you join a startup and it's so small, you're quite integral to the shape that company can really take on. And yeah, if that's something that motivates you and you do want to be like deeply involved in your work, I think it's very fundamentally different from just a job. You're deeply in there and you care about not just sort of, I guess if you're coming from a CS degree, just sort of shipping code or being an engineer, like you get involved in culture, you get involved in leadership, you get involved in sort of the work-life balance and the struggles of everything, and like, what does this company actually become? I would say that's probably one of the biggest values, and maybe benefits. Like if you get in early enough and there's an equity scheme going on at the company, I think there's also some tremendous upsides for the 10% of startups that don't fail. Obviously it's a risk. It's one that, you know, it's not for everybody, but I keep blurring in and out. I don't know what's going on with my camera. But yeah, it's up to you. You got to weigh up the risks. I think if you're young and excited, I think the best places to work for rapidly developing your skill set and growing as a human.
Definitely. With providing value to the startup, how have you found that kind of change as you went from being an engineer to like managing a team of 30? So,
I mean, for context, March last year, Linktree was a company of 7 people. It's now 115. So it's been a pretty tremendous 18 months. Yeah, the value that I've provided to the company has obviously changed dramatically. It's gone from being sort of a technical subject matter expert to trying to multiply that force. And I guess, yeah, maybe be a thought leader and train people so that, you know, you can make yourself redundant. I think that's probably my job at the moment, is just how much information can I share with people so that they can become just as useful as I once was.
definitely. Awesome. And for Jock, being a founder yourself, how do you see kind of the startup ecosystem as being unreliable, unstable, considering you're at the like front end of this as well?
Yeah, look, it's I guess, you know, job certainty isn't always as Bradley was said, you know, it's higher risk for your job in a startup, but the upsides are tremendous. Like I'll just riff on what Bradley said and add a bit more, but being part of something much bigger, you know, like being part of a vision that you can really dig your teeth into and get amongst and actually drive that vision and actually make that vision sort of part of your own vision as well, what you want to see in the company and drive that vision is huge. And it gives you a sense of, you know, ownership and sort of pride in what your company's doing. And in early, what Bradley said is like, you might even get a share in the company if you're a big thought leader early on. And you know, that has, I mean, I think the risk is really minuscule when you look at the upside of, say, a big exit of your company in the future. And I mean, like if you're interested in innovation, I'm sure a lot of engineers here are, and creating something from nothing. That's what startups are all about: innovating, creating something from nothing. So I think it's a great place to start. It's going to expand your knowledge base really rapidly, because if we're a team of 7 now. Bradley said Link was a team of 7 a year ago. We might be a team of 105 next year. So you never know. But like the amount of things you can touch within the company and learn is amazing. So I'd recommend it highly to anyone interested in innovation, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And on a slightly different note, how has being an engineer in the past kind of changed your mind, helped you in a founding journey?
Yeah, I think it's been good. It's been a bit of a natural progression. It really, like, it's business management or business and engineering sort of go hand in hand in a few ways. I mean, like, as an engineer, you're trying to solve problems, right? And as a startup founder, that's all I'm trying to do every day, is solve problems. So those skills in solving problems and processes and process management and efficiency, like improving efficiencies every day. As a founder, that's very, very integral what I do every day. So it's kind of the things you're learning as an engineer probably going to help you as a manager in the future. So yeah, I think it's been great for me.
Definitely. And I think I've heard of, like, we hear from engineering students who want to be founders. They don't want to be, or they're worried to be founders because they're not sure how to take on the commercial side. How did you find learning that kind of side of being a founder as well?
How did I learn? Just doing it, just doing it, really. Yeah. So early on, it was just 2 of us, and we just had to learn everything. We read books, read a lot of books. We trialed and error. We failed. We tried again. So it's an iterative process of trying to work out how to do this and keep improving the processes that you're doing to work out how to do it. And also we also been through, what's really helped us, we've been through a couple of accelerator programs, agricultural one, and we went through MAP, which is a Melbourne Uni accelerator program last year. And we're now entrepreneurs in residence at that program as well. So we mentor the founders coming through. But going through those programs as well, like they've been fantastic. So those mentors that you sort of gather and the networks that you get through those programs is something that's really helped us. And just learning, what the hell a cap table is, or what does MRR mean? Like these little things that are second nature to me now that I had no idea, a few years ago. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen that apart from traditional software roles, so what students are normally going into, so where you see front end, back end, and mechanical engineering, there are lots of other opportunities for students. This one's for Kelvin. Did you have make a transition into PM, or what consists in that role, and does your engineering mindset help with that role as well?
Yeah, so I'm aware that probably not too many people know what a PM is necessarily. So a product manager, some people like to think of it as a CEO of a product, which is pretty abstract, but essentially my job is to sort of figure out what customers want and then rally a team, usually engineers, to solve that problem. So an example would be that we've kind of found that, so at Eucalyptus in our healthcare at our healthcare platform, we've identified that, wow, it turns out 40% of our customers, they actually have, not only do they have hair loss, but they also have an underlying issue of stress. And so then we can business case that out, come up with a prototype solution, and then have engineers build out that MVP, as long as it's aligning with the business mission and the overall business strategy. So you wear quite a bit of hats, but you're kind of more of you're kind of like an internal API for a bunch of different sections of people in the company, is how I like to think about it. In my case, I am specialized as a technical PM, or at least my team is a platform TM. which kind of means that the solutions that I help build is, you know, like just in the last 6 months, I've helped build an internal API to help power some of our personalization features. I've had one feature that required like 3 months of us migrating off of a specific technology, or had to do several months of database migrations. And I think all these types of factors, like all these types of jobs that you need to do to ship certain features, need to play into how you evaluate and prioritize different features. So for my role specifically, I kind of can only do it because I have a technical background, and it kind of means that I can multiply my team in a way that a non-technical PM couldn't have. It's a bit of a loose answer, but it's partially because PMs look very different between different companies and depending on the role. But broadly speaking, any engineer who decides to transition to a PM will benefit from having that experience. Just how that services might be different.
Just to backtrack a little bit, how do you find the comparison from corporate to from startup? And you at ResMed and thousands of students apply there. How do you compare that role to your current role in startup?
Yeah, okay, so I have a lot to say on this, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. At a big company, you're like the smallest cog in a wheel possible, and your day-to-day means nothing. Like, for all intents and purposes, I was writing a 40-page document on the off chance that it was needed 2 years from now to be filed away. And so that's why I needed an outlet that was like actually meaningful, because like my day-to-day job was like a nothing job almost. I feel like at a small company, you have less guardrails for sure. Like as a startup, it is more risky. You have less guardrails to stop you from failing. But I think at the same time, you actually have less guardrails to stop you from succeeding too. So at ResMed, there was very little outlet for me to actually go sort of like push myself in a direction which I felt like I could grow into, because there was so much like bureaucracy and so much different like abstractions between roles. But in a small company where you can wear as many hats as you want and you can take on as many responsibilities as you want, as a engineer, I was doing everything from like architecture design, like for our big AWS migrations, or I was doing like our front end, like design systems or whatever. Like I was taking on a lot more responsibilities than I would in a traditional role. And it also has meant that I was also able to smoothly transition into a PM role, because I was also seeing a lot of that business side and that strategic side that I probably wouldn't have seen if I was in a bigger company siloed to a specific position. And I think just to kind of like nail home that fact more, our head of engineering, our head of product, and our head of growth are all like 26-year-olds who are just super ambitious, like subject matter experts who was able to take on more responsibility. So like when I think of startups, I definitely think of like just more potential for growth if you're willing to like take it on.
Definitely. And that kind of relates to one of the questions from our Q&A, and that's they're asking, in your opinion, would you say engineers working in startups tend to have more experience or are required to have more experience in their field? And is there anything else that you want to expand on that? Or
yeah, so being the second engineer, I have interviewed a lot of the engineers that have joined our company. I think just broad strokes, it just depends on the engineer, not so much on the company. Like you get engineers who can work at great companies like Atlassian, but get super comfortable and they don't really push themselves, and their thinking is potentially a bit out of date, or they've been like away from the code too much and they've just been managing people too long and they're just not useful. So you don't hire them. And then on the other side, you can have like people who are like absolute guns, super passionate, have just spent tons of time on just like trying to become a better version of like better coder. and they always excel really fast. So we have like a technical lead. He's 21. So that's just insane, but he's like an actual prodigy. So I think I wouldn't say it's really down to the company, it's just down to the person.
Definitely. And a general question for the three of you as well. What are the key values or qualities that you look for when you're hiring? So we can start again from Bradley.
It's such a good question. And maybe sort of contradictory to what lots of people think, but probably don't index as heavily on technical expertise as many people would think. I think startup life is difficult, and there's lots of attitude and I guess culture that goes to thriving in that environment. Technical, like we're not going to hire people that don't have any technical skills, of course, but I'd much rather the person that's maybe, slightly less technically adept, but has got the can-do attitude and is really interested in sort of sticking their head into really interesting problems, than the really, really smart person that really can't communicate with other people. I think, especially things are changing now that we're a little bit larger, but when we're a small team, like communication and collaboration is so key to the success, and you can't really hire rock stars and expect to get away with anything. Like prodigies are good, but they become a bottleneck pretty fast. So you really want collaboration to be integral. That's probably one of the key characteristics. And I guess it's changing a lot at the moment, like hiring in this world where everything is remote. It's even different. It's like, what's your written communication like? We're so big on async communication and sort of chat literacy at Linktree. Like, how do you convey emotion and tone correctly? It's quite a hard thing to interview for, but it's actually a really important skill to have, because someone could interview really well on a video call, and then it turns out that throughout the day, they're just unable to actually convey any sort of meaningful message via text. So that's something else that we dig into. I don't know about Jock and Calvin, but big ones for me are sort of people and culture related rather than technical.
Definitely. Just before we keep going, sorry, we have a quick question from the Q&A. Does Linktree offer programs for students or grad roles? And how do you, someone says that they really like what you do. It's an anonymous one.
Thank you. Great news. We're definitely looking at building I guess an official internship program, but perhaps something that we could follow up offline on is a direct line to sort of TA at Linktree. We're going to start offering internship programs for about 4 folks a year at the moment, just while we sort of formalize the process. This is a bit of a sidestep, but I think this is just so key to startup. It's tiny experiments run really, really frequently. We don't want to say we've got a big internship program and take 200 people all at once. Like, you got to start small, experiment and iterate. So we'll follow up offline on that, but there is a program.
Definitely, thanks. And Jock, same question with the qualities and values for hiring.
Yeah. Look, it's pretty similar to what Bradley said, to be honest. Like, we're always looking for just people that are really keen. They can be young, they can be old, they can be from corporate, they can be from, they can be from TAFE. Like, it doesn't matter. Young, keen, and passionate. Or no, it's not young, keen, but anyone that's keen and passionate can sort of apply. Would be really keen to have them on. And these people have got to obviously tick a few boxes, like whatever the job is. But if they can show that they fit into our culture, they're really keen, they're passionate about our vision, then they've got a really, really strong case for getting the job at Marbles. So there's not really I probably haven't had as much hiring experience as some other people here, but we've only got a team of 7, but it's all about that passion for the problems that we're solving, and just a willingness to learn as well. I think is a big thing, because you learn so many different things being in a startup, and your role might change from a front-end developer into a product manager within a year. You don't really, depending on your skill sets. So willingness to learn is a massive thing. So we definitely look for that too. Yeah,
definitely. And out of curiosity for myself, what do you think the key culture elements or values that your company has?
Yeah. Well, it's big on sort of communication, transparency is a big one, and yeah, just and willingness to learn as well. So those are the sort of the three main ones I can think of the top of my head. Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. And also, Kelvin, is there anything that you think maybe slightly different, or maybe if you think the same thing?
Oh, no, they're 100% right. Culture is a super integral part of building a startup. I'm actually surprised to hear Blackbird talk about it. They actually value culture way more than I initially thought. They basically back the team in Eucalyptus's case, from what I hear. So culture is definitely a huge thing. I think like there's a little bit of a misconception that people only hire you for a JavaScript job if you have JavaScript experience or stuff like that, and that really isn't the case. Like when it comes to technical expertise, just if you can show that you're like a person who's like a gun, really passionate about what they do and like really like learning and can just pick up skills very fast because they're obviously very in tune with the industry and like in tune with like working with people and engineers and working with teams, that's pretty much a tick in our books.
Definitely. Awesome. And kind of how do you iterate your process this is one from Q&A as well. How do you iterate your hiring process for engineers? I've seen some really lengthy ones at some established companies like REA. Do you model off other places, rounds of interviews? Is it the same at every stage?
Shall I start again?
Yeah, go for it.
It's definitely iterated pretty rapidly, sort of going from, one engineer a month to I think we've had 20 start this month or in the last 30 days. I understand the sort of need for the lengthy process as you get a little bit larger. Like hiring is a huge investment for folks. But I think I'm a strong advocate or an anti-advocate, if that's the thing, for whiteboarding. I think that's like those eras of technical interviews should be over. I don't think they represent real world problems, especially not in the startup space. Like we're not solving those problems at Linktree. I'll speak just on behalf of us. So that doesn't make any sense. So I think for us as well, it's like valuing your time. Like this is just as much about you as it is for us, right? Like we don't want to waste 3 weeks of your time sort of just teasing you along on this interview process just to let you down. I think the sooner that we can all come to a conclusion, the better. So I think in the iterations that we've done are probably actually like shortening our hiring process, having like really strong pointed questions at each and every step of the way, and making sure that technical assessment really does screen for what you're looking for and not for just like random obtuse CS skills and like knowing your search algorithms and things like that. Like it's just not important. So that's how we've iterated at Linktree, is kind of refining it down just so that you're super respectful of the candidate's time.
Definitely.
And we're pretty similar to Bradley as well. So we have a 2-week iteration process generally from the first application. Really quick, we want to value, people that apply the job model, we want to value their time. I mean, sometimes it's hard for a smaller company like us with Google salary and stuff. So we've got to have other ways to advertise the role in what's, like how to sell the role to a potential employee. And people that sell the vision, we've got to sell the vision, and we want to respect people's time and value that. And like basically what we go out for is we just go back for a quality screening, one big interview, do some reference checks, maybe take home questions, and it's all pretty quick, efficient, and it's just it all comes down to those pointy questions, and trying and get the right person that aligns with the company's values and ticks those technical requirements as well. So it's pretty similar to Bradley actually.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add here to Eucalyptus. Just does a cultural interview and then a technical interview, and we might do a take home if we're still on the fence, but overall pretty much within 2 weeks end to end we'll have an answer. It's not unclear at all.
Awesome. And a couple questions from our Slido that are popping up. The next one that I can see is there a website where students advertise their jobs, or startups, sorry, not students, how best to find a job as a university student? Partially just from me, I can say VC firms, Blackbird, Airtree, and accelerators like MAP and StartMate do kind of advertise jobs here and there, as well as, yeah, that's pretty much what I know. Is there anything else that would be wanted to, like, anyone else wants to add?
Sounds like a startup waiting to happen.
Yeah, I would also recommend, like, there's certain like Slack channels like Startup Victoria, and sort of, I don't know, there's also Stone and Chalk has a bit of a startup presence as well. They have actually have a website for jobs that startups are advertising as well. So that's Stone and Chalk, which is a co-working space down in Docklands, Melbourne. So it's definitely worth looking up that. But yeah, I think getting amongst the communities, like there's people sharing jobs all the time. So if you can find some of those startup communities, you'll see jobs pop up constantly.
Yeah, pretty much what everyone else said. I think the only other thing I can think of is maybe if you are interested in certain, like, say, technologies as an engineer, if you go to something like React Expo, I forgot the name of it, tons of companies show up there to offer jobs to everyone and give you merch. So, you know,
Definitely.
I like those.
Awesome. And I think we'll open up to the audience. If anyone has any questions, please turn off your microphone and turn on your camera and go for it. Don't be shy.
I guess I'll go for one. What sort of percentage of startups are focused around software as their core business, and what percentage have like a hardware component? For those of us that enjoy programming but perhaps don't want to do software engineering but are interested in startups.
I can quickly comment on that. Like, just going from like I've been a couple of accelerator programs, and sort of the percentage of like hardware versus software is sort of like 7 out of 10 would be software, and then maybe 3 out of 10 would be hardware. That's sort of the ballpark. I'm not really sure though. That's just a guess.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
No worries.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? If not, I can quickly go through some of the ones that are on the Slido. Feel free, if you do have a question, just to raise your hand and I can stop. Okay, so next on our Slido is, let's have a look. On culture, how do you find projects as a freelancer? That's an interesting one as well. If anyone has any experience in that kind of.
Well, that was pointed probably when I was saying I was freelancing for 10 years. I don't know, I was kind of fortunate. I think I was just in like I was in a music industry, and I was a sort of rare software engineer in a music industry, and people were like, oh, whoa, you can build stuff. Would you like to build this for me? And ended up building sort of ticketing platforms for music festivals, and it kind of just spiraled on from there. I think 1 or 2 successful freelance projects are kind of all it really takes to get the ball rolling from there. And I'd just say, like I said, startups are hard. Being a freelancer is way more difficult, and I would definitely recommend startups over being a freelancer any day of the week.
Amazing. And this is a slightly different one. What's the process in finding the focus of a startup? I guess that's kind of like the value. So like, how would you suggest that a student goes out and finds like what you guys are passionate about and what you're focused on achieving and what problem you're solving?
Yeah, I can probably talk on that one. Find a problem that you're passionate about solving. So if you've got a problem that you run into every day and it gives you the absolute craps, and you really want to solve it, it's probably a great problem for you to get into and get your teeth into, and try and solve it as a startup. And And I guess another thing with like, you know, starting a startup sounds like a big thing. It doesn't have to be as well. You can make it really low key. You could have a problem and maybe you could just work on it, chip on it at the side, maybe do software developer, you got a problem that you want to solve, chip on it at the side, learn some things on the side. And then maybe when you get the confidence or when you learn a few more things, you can step it up and consider doing it full time. But starting off, just have a crack. Just like find a problem and just see what you can do with it. You don't have to like be, you know, $1 billion company in 5 years time. You can just start one, fail a little bit, give it a crack, and you know, you would have learned a heap in the process. So would highly recommend just, you know, doing it on the side for a bit and seeing how it goes.
Definitely.
Just have a quick question myself for all of you. All of you have had great experience. I'm curious. I think communication between like people you look up to, people you want to be, people you aspire, like, you know, for example, if I want to be a PM, I'll be talking to someone in the industry, right? So throughout your career, I'm guessing you guys have, the common term is networking, but I guess have reached out to these people. How useful did you find this, and how useful did you find communicating with them was, and how important do you think that is to actually be proactive in doing that?
Yeah, I'm happy to chat again. I think, I think it's important, like reaching out to people that are smarter than you in a certain area and learning from them is always going to be valuable. So we have like a sort of a mentor advisory group at our company. Like I don't know everything really, really well how to run a company, right? So I got to like lean on people's expertise and bring that expertise into our company, and that helps us sort of excel or see what we're missing or whatever. And that's the same as, like, you know, as a career in a PM, I'd imagine. You know, if you're leaning on the expertise of a mentor and as a product manager mentor, you're going to learn so much so quickly, and maybe you'll see something that you didn't before. So I'd recommend reaching out to someone.
And kind of bouncing off that, how would you like suggest students go and find the right mentor for themselves, and like how do you get over that fear of cold calling someone?
Good question. I don't think cold calling, but like just, I think it's back again trying to get amongst those sort of ecosystems, startup ecosystems, the networks. Like there's a bunch of different places where there's meetups, online meetups, all these things. So I don't think, I don't think cold calling. It'd be probably a cold email, but I think there's plenty of opportunities if you want to start networking a little bit.
Can I just add? I think coming to things like this is a perfect example, and I won't speak on behalf of Kelvin and Jock, but like, if you want to reach out to me, you've got my name, find me on LinkedIn, chuck me a message. I'd be more than happy to chat with you afterwards. I think like it's the same thing. It's like a snowball effect. If we can start chatting, I can find ways to introduce you to people that maybe would help you on your pathway as well. I've been extremely fortunate and just sort of had mentors land in my lap that I'm so thankful for, and I have to kind of pay that forward. So definitely please reach out if you're interested in anything that we're doing, or just have questions about the practice in general.
I think just on that, I think as a rule, I think people are generally super open to helping anyone who's like hardworking and eager. So if you can, you don't have to prove that to people in your first sentence, but I think showing that like you are eager to learn and you want to bounce ideas off of them, or just like get some quick guidance from them. I think what I found is people have tended to be super receptive to that, as long as you reach out to them.
Calvin, I was just wondering, thinking on your experience with the startup that failed, how did you, I don't know, if I was in that situation, I feel like I would be very tentative to work for another startup. Like, I'm not really in the startup space. I've never done that before, but like, how did you have the confidence to go into something else, and what did you look for to make sure the same thing didn't happen again, sort of?
I think it's like, I think it was a bit of self-reflection and thinking about what I actually want out of my career. And I think what I realized is I just want to build things that I'm proud of. And I simply just wasn't proud of the things that I was building in a big company because I saw such a small sliver of it. And as long as that held true, it means that if I wasn't able to do that the first time, then I just had to reassess to myself, okay, how do I then just do it right the second time? And what I identified was, hey, this company here, they look pretty good. The guys are pretty smart when I've talked to them. I reckon, even if it fails in a year's time, who cares? I'll just learn how they do it for like the first year. And it just so happened that I've lucked out quite a bit and we've kind of rocket shipped instead.
Amazing. Is there any other questions from the crowd? Would be great.
I was actually monitoring the slider and I'm curious about this question myself as well, so I'm going to jump in and ask. From particularly Jock, but I guess Kelvin and Bradley, you guys can jump in as well. The question is, what about becoming a founder of a startup? Any tips for students thinking about this?
Yeah, I think I touched on that kind of before. Like it's about, finding that problem that you're passionate about solving, or finding that problem that you're really pissed off with and you want to solve it. As I said before, it's, you can go find this problem and find a team straight away and go all in, or you can, play around on the side and learn a few things and like work out how to set up like a Stripe payment system on a website or something, just to learn something and just to get just to get your feet, like yourself in the reeds and work things out that way. Because like once you start doing that, you're gonna learn a heap. Like you're gonna learn basically, the things of how to run a business, learn how to, like sort of, we based a lot of our early stage company development off this lean methodology, and you're going to learn a lot on how to do all that stuff. So sorry, that was a jumbled answer, but I think I'm repeating myself, so I'm confused.
I think you're 100% correct, actually. As a tip for anyone, the reason why my first startup failed was because I think I wanted to be a founder, but I didn't want to solve a problem. Does that make sense? Like I kind of came in going like, let's make a startup instead of let's solve a problem. And because of that, it was like all over the place. We pivoted a bajillion times. We weren't allocating resources correctly. We burnt out of our capital super fast. So I 100% would recommend you focus on the problem first and just solve for that. You don't even have to do it like Jock and Bradley have stated. You don't even have to do it full time. Like I did it on the side of my ResMed job. So
yeah, and if you're keen in working at a startup, we've got a current junior front end developer position up for grabs. So please apply.
I guess following up on that, do you have any tips for finding good co-founders and stuff? Like, are there specific things you should look for in those people? Like, should you probably have known them for a little while beforehand?
Good
generally speak.
Yeah. So so a co-founder in your company is basically a marriage. You're joined at the hip for the rest of your company's life, and if you're a startup founder, that company is like your baby. So it's a pretty big deal finding the right person to be a co-founder with, or co-founders, as you have multiple. Look, it's pretty hard, and ideal combination is like a technical co-founder and a non-technical co-founder that maybe more to the passion of the project. And for me, that was a good friend of mine, but for other people, they might not have someone with the same sort of interests, or that aren't that keen with it. And it comes back down to, again, as before, is networking in the areas where people are really, like this startup link thing, where people are passionate about startups, and this is where you start conversations with people, and you explain your idea to someone about, that sounds awesome, where can I get in? And once you find someone, or not that one person, but finding people that are passionate about it, it's a really good start to finding a co-founder. Yeah.
Thanks.
Amazing. Is there anyone else that wants to ask any questions? I'll take that as a no. There's a couple of questions that I think are super interesting. One is there a lack of mentorship at small startups? So I think that's also internal as well as external.
Definitely. Internally, I would say it really depends. I speak on my experience. Like I was the sort of sole engineer for a long time and was looking for mentorship internally that just didn't exist. So that's when you have to look externally, and there's an abundance to be found, like we just spoke about. Like those cold calls don't turn out to be so cold often. I think there's some element of flattery or something when you reach out to someone and say, like, I think you're awesome, can you help me? But it can definitely, I mean, they're all interesting problems, but perhaps that sort of like the ambiguity and flying through the darkness of the startup is kind of part and parcel of the job, and that mentorship might not be there when you're looking for it the most, and you will have to have some degree of sort of needing to self-service that at times. I think there's a lot of, like what Jock has said, you've got to learn things constantly. You've got to be okay with this. It's like a journey of just constant self-improvement and constant learning, and I don't see it slowing down. I'm 4 years in now. I reckon I've got a good another 6 years ahead before this even begins to plateau. So yeah, there's a lack of mentorship to start with, but very fortunate now, like as more and more people, I guess, come into the company, like I'm just hiring people that are smarter than me so they can become my mentors, and it's the best.
Yeah, it's 100% the best feeling, hiring someone that's smarter than you. It's like, oh man, now that I don't have to think like so hard about anything because, you know, it's done for me now. So
So good.
Awesome. I have a really fun one from the Q&A as well. On culture, how does culture evolve from free pizza, ping pong, and a fridge full of beer? Would anyone like to speak on that one?
culture right now, it's all remotely, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's evolving our culture remotely is sort of like, how do we align where we want the company to go with the people that work for it, and make people really passionate about that vision. And that drives sort of the culture. People get really excited and you like sort of hit these goals and everyone celebrates, and you get up and you catch up on Zoom, you'll have a beer with everyone over Zoom or whatever, because you've hit this awesome goal, and everyone gets a bonus. I don't know, but like, you know, these sort of, yeah, those sort of things that are driving our culture. But I'd love to hear about, you know, Bradley, how he's, you know, creating culture at Linktree and things.
Yeah, I'm at risk of getting too like philosophical, but we had a chat about this morning. Like those things that are listed, that's not culture, they're perks. Culture is the behavior that you reward within the business. And like Jock said, that's people aligning to the vision, the mission, and the values of the company. It's also the way we communicate with one another. That's what builds a culture. That's like the fabric that connects all of the people of the business. That's what we would define as culture. Beer and ping pong's awesome, but they're perks, and that's really like, that's not going to keep you at a company for very long. It's really those relationships and your connection to the work that you're doing that I think really defines culture and what will keep you there.
Awesome, that's great. I couldn't agree more. I see a message in the chat. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not. If there's a question from the crowd, feel free. Otherwise, I have one last question. Awesome. The last question for you guys is, if you could go back to your 20-year-old student self, what would you tell him?
Don't know. I would tell him to try more things, be more courageous.
I would say probably don't like hold so tightly on your degree. I think a lot of people think that what they studied in uni is the pathway they have to go down, and you'll quickly learn that like the job market and the demand of different companies are super versatile, and your skill set is also super versatile too. I mean, I've changed careers like 3 times in 3 years. But I'm really liking where I am now, and I'm constantly learning. So I'm really happy doing what I'm doing at the moment.
I mean, I was studying music. I probably would have said, go and study something else, you idiot. But also, I think like I probably wouldn't have changed anything. I'm super happy on the journey that I've been on and have been very fortunate. And what Kelvin's just said, like, I don't even have a degree. I shouldn't be in this position. I shouldn't be here, but I am. And I think it's really like, if you're passionate about what you're doing, you'll find the pathway for you. These are all just skills that you've been developing and learning about, and everything changes so rapidly. Just use them as sort of a foundation for what's happening tomorrow.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Just before we wrap up, just some next events for the Startup Link, what we have coming up. We have another panel, if that's more for business students. If you are an engineering student who is curious about roles like a product manager, I'm sure we'll be discussing some more of that kind of thing, as well as other kind of roles in startups that are possible. And we also have a startup expo coming up at the end of the term. I'm not entirely sure which month. I think it's October, but memories, yeah. If you do want to find out more details, sign up to our member base and we'll be sending out emails on there. Arian's just chucked it in the chat, and we'll be doing a Gather Town, which Arian will also send in the chat. That is like kind of, we can chat to each other. It's a virtual kind of meeting, and I'll pass to Sarah for closing. Unless there's anything, like any last questions anyone has.
I just want to say thank you again, guys. I think you're really inspired, at least some of us in the crowd who are engineers, to hopefully take a different direction and have a bigger appetite for risk. So thanks all of you for coming down, sparing some time for us. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thanks all for attending. That was really great, particularly for me because this is so not my industry. So it's great to get an insight into a different industry altogether. And I'm kind of wishing that I studied engineering or worked in startups back when I was younger. So thanks all for that, and make sure you attend some more of the events that we've got. We've got a full program tomorrow as well. So thanks all.